The human mind is a labyrinth filled with winding corridors of emotion, reason, and instinct. But what happens when a mind takes a turn down a path of darkness, one that leads to unspeakable acts? Imagine a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind where children play freely and doors remain unlocked. Now, imagine a charming neighbor, always ready with a smile, who hides a collection of horrifying secrets. This was the reality for those living next to Dennis Rader, the infamous BTK killer. For decades, Rader lived a double life, devoted father by day, methodical murderer by night. The question that lingers isn't just how he evaded capture for so long, but why he did what he did in the first place. What drives someone like him to kill repeatedly, seemingly without remorse? To find the answer, we must delve deep into the psyche of those we label as serial killers. Every serial killer starts somewhere. Their horrific journeys often begin with subtle signs overlooked by those around them. These early behavioral markers, known as the McDonald triad, can include animal cruelty, bedwetting beyond childhood, and setting fires. Jeffrey Dahmer, for instance, was a child with a fascination for dead animals. He dissected roadkill, claiming he wanted to understand how they worked. While unsettling, such behaviors are rarely recognized as precursors to more sinister tendencies. However, when paired with neglect, abuse, or isolation, these signs can spiral into something far more dangerous. The transition from troubled child to calculated killer is often gradual, yet the clues are there. Ted Bundy, widely regarded as a textbook sociopath, was described as polite and intelligent but emotionally distant as a child. Despite his charm, friends and family noticed his cold detachment, an early hint at his lack of empathy, a hallmark trait among serial killers. These seemingly small behaviors are like breadcrumbs leading to the dark corridors of their minds. Some serial killers have baffled even the most seasoned investigators, turning their cases into decades-long puzzles. Take, for example, the Zodiac Killer, who taunted police and media with cryptic messages, codes, and a body count that grew as he mocked their inability to catch him. His identity remains a mystery, and his motives, whether rooted in anger, thrill-seeking, or pure sadism, are left to speculation. Another chilling example is the Green River Killer, Gary Ridgway, who eluded capture for years while leaving a trail of victims in Washington state. Ridgway's ability to blend into society while committing heinous acts highlights a key trait in many serial killers: the ability to appear utterly ordinary. These infamous cases remind us that understanding the psychology of these killers is no simple task. Their actions defy logic, and their minds operate in ways that evade conventional reasoning. Yet each unsolved case is a haunting reminder of how little we truly know about what drives these individuals and how far we still have to go in unraveling the mysteries of their behavior. Serial killers are often described as walking contradictions, charismatic yet cold, intelligent yet irrational. Beneath the surface, they share psychological traits that reveal their dark complexities. Among the most striking is their lack of empathy. This inability to connect emotionally allows them to commit heinous acts without remorse. They view their victims as objects, pawns in their games of control and dominance. Manipulation is another common trait. Take Ted Bundy, for example, a man whose charm and good looks masked his sadistic tendencies. Bundy lured victims by feigning injury, appealing to their sympathy before striking. This skill to deceive, combined with a profound need for power, defines many serial killers. Their crimes are less about the act itself and more about asserting dominance over another life, fulfilling a deeply rooted psychological need. For some, this need for power extends to playing cat and mouse games with law enforcement. Dennis Rader, the BTK killer, relished in sending taunting letters to police, boasting about his crimes. It wasn't just about killing, it was about the control he maintained over his victims, the investigators, and even the media. These traits, manipulation, lack of empathy, and a power obsession, are the twisted threads woven into the minds of serial killers. One name that continues to captivate criminologists and psychologists alike is that of Edmund Kemper, the co-ed killer. Standing at 6 feet 9 inches tall, Kemper was as physically imposing as he was psychologically complex. He began his killing spree in the early 70s, targeting young women he picked up as hitchhikers in California. But Kemper's crimes were not limited to strangers. His first victims were his grandparents, whom he killed as a teenager. What sets Kemper apart is his introspective nature. Unlike many killers, he willingly cooperated with investigators and provided chillingly detailed accounts of his crimes. He even offered insights into his motivations, describing his murders as an outlet for the rage he felt toward his mother. Kemper's background, combined with his towering intellect and disturbingly candid demeanor, makes him a unique figure in the study of serial killers. His story reveals how deeply personal grievances can manifest into acts of unimaginable violence. Serial killers are not born. They are shaped by a combination of biology, environment, and experience. For many, childhood is a crucible of trauma that sets the stage for their later crimes. Edmund Kemper, for example, endured a toxic relationship with his mother, who belittled and isolated him. She locked him in a dark basement at night, claiming he was a danger to his sisters. This sense of rejection and humiliation festered, fueling his later actions. Similarly, John Wayne Gacy, the killer clown, grew up in a household marked by physical abuse and an emotionally distant father. Gacy's desperate need for approval and the shame he felt about his hidden sexual orientation likely played roles in his descent into violence. In some cases, the absence of nurturing relationships leaves children emotionally hollow. Jeffrey Dahmer, for instance, experienced a lack of stability at home, with parents who often fought and eventually divorced. His isolation and feelings of abandonment may have contributed to his later need to control and dominate his victims entirely. These childhood experiences highlight a recurring theme. Trauma and neglect can fracture a child's psyche, creating the foundation for the disturbed minds we see in many serial killers. However, it's important to note that not every child who endures such hardships follows this path, adding another layer of complexity to the psychology of these individuals. Why do serial killers kill? The answer is far from simple. Psychological theories attempt to unravel this mystery, pointing to a combination of factors that influence their actions. One prominent theory is the compulsion to kill, driven by unresolved trauma or internal conflict. For some, murder is a release, a way to assert control in a life where they felt powerless. Another theory revolves around the idea of psychopathy. Psychopaths lack empathy and exhibit a total disregard for societal norms. This condition, often linked to abnormalities in the brain's amygdala, is common among serial killers. For individuals like Ted Bundy, the thrill of the hunt and the act of killing provided a euphoric sense of power and control. Some killers are motivated by sexual fantasies or sadistic desires. Jeffrey Dahmer, for instance, sought complete control over his victims, even attempting to create living zombies through horrific experiments. Others, like the Zodiac Killer, seemed driven by a need for recognition, feeding their egos through taunts and public attention. These motivations, while chillingly diverse, share one common thread: the killer's warped perception of reality, where taking lives serves as a twisted form of fulfillment. Serial killers are often defined by their methodologies, the unique patterns and rituals that govern their crimes. These rituals serve as their signature, a psychological hallmark that satisfies their compulsions and leaves a trail of terror. For example, the BTK killer, Dennis Rader, derived gratification not just from killing, but from the control he exerted over his victims. Binding, torturing, and killing became a ritualistic performance, one he meticulously documented for his own satisfaction. Others, like Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, demonstrated methodical precision, targeting vulnerable individuals and disposing of their bodies in remote areas. Ridgway's calculated approach allowed him to evade capture for years. Ted Bundy, on the other hand, preyed on young women who resembled his ex-girlfriend, creating a psychological connection between his victims and his unresolved personal vendettas. Bundy's ability to adapt his methods, changing locations, tactics, and even his appearance made him one of the most elusive killers in history. These patterns are not random. They are deeply rooted in the killer's psychology. Each act, from the choice of victim to the manner of killing, fulfills a specific psychological need, whether it's exerting control, achieving sexual gratification, or feeding an insatiable ego. One of the most unsettling aspects of many serial killers is their ability to lead double lives. By day, they appear as ordinary citizens, neighbors, friends, or even community leaders, while by night, they unleash their darkest desires. This duality allows them to mask their crimes and blend seamlessly into society. John Wayne Gacy, known as the Killer Clown, was a prime example. By day, he was a successful businessman and a respected member of his community, performing at children's parties dressed as a clown. By night, he lured young men to his home, where he tortured and killed them. His outward persona was so convincing that even his neighbors struggled to believe he was capable of such atrocities. Dennis Rader, the BTK killer, lived a similar double life. As a church leader and a family man, he seemed the epitome of respectability. Yet, behind closed doors, he meticulously planned and executed his murders, keeping trophies as reminders of his heinous acts. These deceptive facades are not merely acts of concealment, they are integral to the killer's psychological profiles. The ability to compartmentalize their lives demonstrates their chilling control and lack of remorse, traits that make them so dangerous and difficult to apprehend. Every serial killer's reign of terror eventually meets a turning point, a moment when their carefully constructed facade begins to crack. For Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, it was the advent of DNA technology. Investigators had collected evidence from his victims in the 1980s, but it wasn't until the early 2000s that advancements in forensic science linked Ridgway to the murders. This breakthrough led to his arrest and subsequent confession to killing over 48 women. In other cases, a killer's arrogance becomes their downfall. Ted Bundy's capture stemmed from his overconfidence. After escaping custody in Colorado, he resumed his killing spree in Florida, believing he was invincible. His carelessness led to his arrest during a routine traffic stop, where police found incriminating evidence in his car. Even meticulous killers like Dennis Rader eventually make mistakes. Rader's undoing came when he sent a floppy disk to police, believing it couldn't be traced. Forensic analysis revealed metadata linking the disk to Rader's church, leading to his capture after decades of evading justice. These breakthroughs underscore the importance of persistence in investigations. While some killers may seem unstoppable, even the smallest mistake can unravel years of terror and bring them to justice. Interrogating a serial killer is as much a psychological battle as it is a legal process. Investigators aim to unravel the twisted logic behind their actions, while killers often remain evasive, manipulative, or eerily composed. Ted Bundy, for instance, displayed a chilling calmness during his interrogations, deflecting questions with charm and wit. He referred to his killings in the third person, as though he were narrating someone else's story, distancing himself from his crimes. Some killers, like Edmund Kemper, are surprisingly forthcoming. Kemper confessed his crimes in detail, explaining that his murders were fueled by unresolved rage toward his mother. His chilling self-awareness gave investigators insight into his psyche, but also highlighted the depth of his depravity. Others, such as John Wayne Gacy, attempted to justify their actions. Gacy claimed his victims were runaways or delinquents, as if their perceived vulnerability excused his atrocities. Interrogations reveal not only the killer's justifications, but also their psychological traits. Whether they deny, deflect, or confess, their words offer a glimpse into the minds of individuals who see themselves as separate from societal norms, where morality is twisted to fit their desires. The courtroom becomes a stage where serial killers reveal yet another facet of their personalities. Their reactions during trials can range from defiant arrogance to feigned remorse, each behavior serving a psychological purpose. Ted Bundy, for example, turned his trial into a spectacle. Representing himself, he used the courtroom as a platform to showcase his intelligence and charm, seemingly relishing the attention. In contrast, Jeffrey Dahmer displayed a somber demeanor, admitting guilt and expressing remorse. While some viewed his actions as genuine, others speculated that his behavior was an attempt to mitigate public and judicial outrage. John Wayne Gacy, on the other hand, remained unapologetic, maintaining his innocence despite overwhelming evidence. Serial killers' behaviors during trials often reflect their psychological profiles. Those with narcissistic tendencies, like Bundy, seek to control the narrative, while others may use the platform to manipulate public perception. Their actions in the courtroom serve as a final act in their twisted theater, leaving lasting impressions on victims, families, jurors, and the public. The media plays a significant role in shaping the narrative around serial killers, often amplifying their crimes and unintentionally their egos. Killers like the Zodiac reveled in the attention, sending taunting letters and cryptic codes to newspapers, knowing their words would be splashed across headlines. For them, the media became an extension of their crimes, a way to exert control and feed their narcissism. Ted Bundy's charm and good looks earned him a bizarre celebrity status, with some members of the public romanticizing his persona despite his heinous acts. This attention not only fueled Bundy's ego, but also demonstrated how media coverage can blur the line between condemning and sensationalizing killers. In some cases, media coverage aids investigations by spreading awareness and generating tips. However, it can also hinder progress by glorifying the killers or creating public panic. Serial killers are keenly aware of their media portrayal, often altering their behavior to maintain the mystique or notoriety that feeds their twisted sense of self-worth. Serial killers, despite their unique stories, often share strikingly similar patterns that criminologists and profilers use to understand and predict their behavior. Many display a preference for certain victim types, often linked to their personal traumas or fantasies. For instance, Ted Bundy targeted young women with dark hair parted in the middle, a profile eerily resembling his ex-girlfriend. Killers also exhibit cooling off periods between murders, reflecting their psychological need to relive the crime through memories before the compulsion to kill resurfaces. The method of killing often carries ritualistic elements, from the precise binding of victims by Dennis Rader to the post-mortem mutilations performed by Jeffrey Dahmer. Another commonality is their ability to evade detection by leading double lives. Many killers, like John Wayne Gacy, maintained outward appearances of normalcy, masking their crimes under a veneer of respectability. These patterns, though chilling, provide invaluable insights for investigators, enabling them to link crimes, predict behaviors, and ultimately bring these individuals to justice. Serial killers leave an indelible mark on society, not just through their crimes, but also through the cultural and social ripples they create. Communities are often left shattered, grappling with fear, grief, and a deep sense of vulnerability. The murders of the Green River Killer, for example, terrorized Washington state for decades, altering the way people viewed their own safety. Women became more cautious, hitchhiking decreased, and neighborhoods that once felt secure were shrouded in unease. On a broader scale, serial killers have influenced everything from law enforcement practices to popular culture. The rise of criminal profiling in the 70s, championed by the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit, was largely a response to understanding and capturing serial killers. Meanwhile, films, books, and television shows have drawn inspiration from real-life cases, simultaneously educating and sensationalizing their stories. These cultural impacts reflect a society fascinated and horrified by the idea of evil lurking in plain sight. While the stories of serial killers spark conversations about justice and safety, they also force society to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature, vulnerability, and the systems that allow such individuals to evade detection for so long. Despite widespread fascination, many myths about serial killers persist, often skewing public perception. One of the most pervasive is the belief that all serial killers are geniuses, operating with a level of intellect far beyond ordinary criminals. While some, like Ted Bundy, displayed above average intelligence, others, like Gary Ridgway, were far from intellectual masterminds. Their success in evading capture often stems more from systemic failures or sheer luck than from their own cunning. Another misconception is that serial killers are all loners who look and act the part. In reality, many lead seemingly normal lives with families, jobs, and social connections that mask their darker inclinations. This myth, fueled by media portrayals, makes it harder for society to identify potential dangers in everyday life. There's also the false assumption that serial killers are a thing of the past or confined to certain countries like the United States. In truth, serial killers exist globally, and their methods continue to evolve alongside technology. These misconceptions, while often rooted in cultural narratives, obscure the real, often unpredictable nature of these individuals, making understanding and stopping them even more challenging. Some of the most chilling serial killer cases remain unsolved, leaving communities haunted by unanswered questions and the lingering fear of a killer still at large. The Zodiac Killer is one of the most infamous examples. Despite decades of investigation, countless theories, and a barrage of coded messages, the Zodiac's identity remains a mystery. His cryptic communications and the randomness of his crimes continue to baffle experts, turning the case into one of America's most enduring enigmas. Another haunting case is that of the Long Island serial killer, who is believed to have murdered over a dozen people, primarily sex workers, along the remote shores of Gilgo Beach. Despite some breakthroughs, including the identification of several victims, the killer has never been caught, leaving a shadow over the investigation. Globally, cases like the Monster of Florence in Italy or the Phantom of Heilbronn in Germany highlight how serial killers can evade justice for years, even decades. These unresolved cases serve as reminders of the limitations of forensic science and human fallibility, leaving the chilling possibility that some killers may never face justice. Preventing the rise of serial killers is a complex challenge, but advances in psychology, profiling, and forensic science have made significant strides. Criminal profiling, pioneered by the FBI, has become a crucial tool in identifying patterns and predicting behaviors. Profilers analyze crime scenes, victimology, and behavioral clues to build psychological portraits of offenders, narrowing down potential suspects before they strike again. Modern technology also plays a vital role. DNA databases and advancements in forensic science have linked cold cases to active investigations, as seen in the capture of the Golden State Killer. Early intervention programs aimed at identifying at-risk individuals focus on addressing factors like childhood trauma, mental health issues, and violent tendencies. Schools, social workers, and psychologists are often the first line of defense in spotting troubling behaviors that could escalate. However, the key to prevention lies not only in identifying potential threats, but also in fostering a society that prioritizes mental health, community support, and education. While no system is foolproof, these efforts offer hope that future tragedies can be averted, ensuring fewer victims and a safer world. Why are we drawn to stories of serial killers? Perhaps it's the psychological enigma. They represent the ultimate puzzle of human behavior. Their crimes defy logic and morality, forcing us to confront the darkest corners of the human mind. For some, there's a sense of fear. If evil can hide behind the mask of normalcy, how can we ever truly feel safe? For others, it's fascination, an attempt to understand what drives someone to commit such incomprehensible acts. Serial killers also challenge our perception of justice. While some are caught and punished, others evade capture, leaving society grappling with the notion of unresolved crimes. The allure of these stories lies in their paradoxical nature. They repulse and captivate us, reminding us of the fragility of human life and the depths of human depravity. As we reflect on these cases, we must ask ourselves not only how such individuals come to be, but also how society can better address the systemic failures that allow them to thrive. In understanding their stories, we may better understand ourselves, our fears, and the systems designed to protect us. As we close this exploration into the psychology of serial killers, I leave you with questions that challenge us to think deeper. What does the existence of serial killers say about our society, and how can we address the underlying factors that contribute to their actions? Are there warning signs we may have overlooked in those around us? How can we strike a balance between vigilance and paranoia? And perhaps most unsettling of all, how many killers are still out there, living among us, hiding behind ordinary facades? Let these questions linger as a reminder that the human mind is both a marvel and a mystery, capable of incredible empathy, but also unfathomable darkness. The answers may not come easily, but the pursuit of understanding is a step toward a safer, more informed world.